We remember a red great as we also commemorate the 1975 World Series. Cool Sports presents on the Daily. Well, VIP, how are you doing? Cole Johnson's on the mic on the Daily's on Tap, presented by Cole Sports. It is Thursday. It is Throwback Thursday. You know how we get down. Let's get to it, because Thursdays are always the episode that we October 22nd, 1975. Now, on any other time, I guess you could say that would be a nondescript date. But in sports, it was a huge date. I mean, 3 weeks before we saw the Thriller in Manila take place. Exactly 3 weeks before. So this was a prime time for the sports calendar. And of course, with every October, is always the Fall Classic. So, of course, since we are in the throes of the World Series in 2020, let's look back at 145 years prior that was considered by many to be the greatest fall classic that ever existed. And to me, it's one of the greatest. Why? So on one side, you had the Boston Red Sox, a young Fred Lynn. You had Dwight Evans. You had Jim Rice. You had the veteran called Yastrzemski. And you had the ace of all aces, Tiant. On the other side, you had this growing power called the Cincinnati Reds. In fact, for at least 3 years, they called themselves the Big Red Machine. And they had many, many great players on the team. Johnny Bench, Greg Concepcion, Ken Griffey Sr., Pete Rose. They were even managed by a guy who had spark and fire in Sparky. A litany of arms. And then you have Joe Morgan. And so you have this wonderful setup. Both these teams ran away with their divisions, the AL East for the Red Sox, the NL West for the Reds. And then they swept their way in the championship series round. Only went 5 games around that time. So each team swept their opponent en route to the World Series. And here they were. The Red Sox had home field advantage. And so the series started. And if it went 7 games, ended at Fenway Park. And so to lay out the series itself, the series did go 7 games. And in those 7 games, 5 of them, yes, not 1, 2, 3, or 4, 5 of them were decided by 1 run. 2 of them were in extra innings. And you only had 2 blowouts. In fact, game 1 was a shutout, 6-0. Red Sox won it. Tiant did it with his bat as well with his arm as he threw a complete game shutout. And quite frankly, there was no answer for the Reds that they could offer. And that's what happened. Now, game 2 was a different story. That was more nip and tuck, and the Reds won by one run, as the same as they did in game 3, bottom of the 9th with an RBI that was driven in by Joe Morgan. And I think Pete Rose was the one who plated that winning run. And it went back and forth like that. Game 4 went to the Red Sox by 1 run. And so the series was tied at 2. Then the Reds blew out the Red Sox by a count of 6-2. So they had a 3-2 series lead and then a rain delay. Yeah, so when they traveled to go back to Boston from Cincinnati, the most iconic game of that series was actually supposed to take place on the 20th. I'm sorry, on the 19th. But didn't happen, as it was rainy in Boston for 3 consecutive days. And so they couldn't do anything for that time period. And then the most iconic game took place. And it was nip and tuck. The Red Sox jumped out to a 3-run lead early in the game. The Reds in the middle innings chipped away at that lead. They finally tied it up. And then they got ahead in the 6th and held that lead and extended it in the 7th and 8th, only to see a 3-run homer by Benny Carbo sail over the center field fence to tie the game at 6. Well, that was the score from the bottom of the 8th to the bottom of the 12th. And both teams had their shots to end the game before then. The bottom of the 9th, the Red Sox squandered some runs. The top of the 11th and 12th, the Reds squandered runs. So we get to the bottom of the 11th, and Carlton Fisk steps up to the plate, and he sees a 1-0 slider, and he hits it down the left field line. And it's hooking ever so close to that foul pole. It's high enough to get over the green monster, but the problem is not, is it high enough to clear the monster, but is it fair or foul? So the ball hits the foul pole, which in Major League Baseball, if a ball hits the foul pole, that's considered fair. And so if a ball hits the foul pole and it's over the wall, that's a homer. And Fenway Park, I highly doubt, even when they won championships later on, closer to 2020, I really highly doubt that that stadium was as loud as it was then. And Carlton himself was absolutely funny because he was running down first and he was just looking at the ball. He was just looking at the trajectory of it. And he just kept trying to wave it fair. He was just motioning to the right. He was like, no, stay fair, stay fair, stay fair. And once it hit the pole, Fenway went ballistic. And so did we as baseball fans, because we got treated to probably one of the greatest
Game 7
contests ever. So the Red Sox again jump out to a quick lead early in the game. I think it was about in the 3rd. They jumped out to a quick lead. The Reds slowly got back in the middle innings. They tied it up, and it stayed tied until the top of the 9th when they had a rally. Started with a walk by Griffey, if I'm not mistaken. A ground out a sacrifice by Concepcion, I think, advanced Griffey to second. Dame Driessen ground out put Griffey to third. Then there was a left-handed pitcher, and I forget the pitcher's name at the moment, that was on the hill. Rose was at bat. He's a right-handed hitter. And so he intentionally walked Rose to get the first because he wanted the lefty on lefty matchup, because Joe Morgan, although he threw right, he only batted left-handed. So he wanted that left-handed versus left-handed battle. But the thing was, Joe Morgan was probably one of the best left-handed hitters against left-handed pitching that we've ever seen. And so he took a sinker that was supposed to dip real low, and he blooped into the center field, and that drove him the winning run in Griffey. And another iconic moment, too, was after the run scored and the throw was too late to the plate, they tried to get Rose out at third, And Rose was, of course, he was known to dive head first when he slid. And he slid underneath the third baseman's legs, right between his legs, slid underneath, and was safe at third. So the Red Sox were retired in order in the bottom of the ninth. In fact, Carl Yastrzemski recorded the last out with a fly ball to center field. And this date, Game 7 of that monumental series, took place. And the Reds won it 4-3. They won it 4-3. And they went on to also win the next year's World Series as well. But I have to thank the Reds and the Red Sox for giving us one of the most iconic
Game 7.
contests ever. And while I'm here, let me, for a quick moment, talk about Joe Morgan. And he passed away earlier this week, and prayers are with the family of Mr. Morgan and all the colleagues he worked with, the players he played with, the teams that he played on, which were the Astros, the Reds, the Phillies, the A's, and the Giants, if I'm not mistaken. Joe was just one of those guys who you just knew that he was going to outwork you. You knew that he was going to be dogmatic and he was not going to settle for anything. That whatever you needed him to do, he would do it. If you needed him to be power, he could present that power to you. If you needed him to bunt, he'd do that bunt. If you needed him to just simply draw contact, he could do that too. If you needed him to steal a base, he could do that too. He was an underrated 5-tool player because he had a great glove and great arm too. What I loved about him the most was his personality. He was grounded. He was assured. He was intelligent beyond compare. He was one of the most insightful baseball men I have ever heard. And I enjoyed him calling alongside, I think his name is John Miller, I'm sorry, when they used to call Sunday Night Baseball on ESPN. And he was absolutely fantastic. He knew the sport inside and out, backwards and forwards. And he was such a wonderful ambassador of the sport. And we're going to indelibly miss him. Joe, my father loved you, and he made me love you when he forced me to watch who you were and what you were. And you were, sir, a phenomenal, phenomenal player. Joe Morgan, former Reds, Big Red Machine, A's, Giants, Phillies, and Astros, player and commentator, color guy. He is dead at the age of 77. Thank you, Joe. Now, what memories did you have of the 1975 World Series? What stood out in that for you? Because I know there are memories that you have of that particular fall classic. I want to know, like this video, and I want to hear you comment below what it is that just stood out in 1975 World Series, or even Joe Morgan. Don't forget to hit the notification bell and subscribe to this channel for any and all premieres of Cole Sports. And if you want this shirt that I have, the details as to how to get it is in the description box below this video. I thank you so much, VIP. I love you. I hope everything is blessed in your world. For all of us at Cole Sports, I'm Cole Johnson, and this has been yet another installment of Cole Sports on the visual and on the daily.